The rain had been falling for 3 days when the control room went silent. And the first thing I noticed wasn't the silence itself. It was the way the water pressure gauge in front of me kept climbing, while nobody upstairs answered the phone. I was 90 feet down inside the guts of Kettleridge Dam, standing on a steel catwalk in the drainage gallery, with my flashlight cutting through mist that shouldn't have been that thick. My name is Elliot Vance. I'm 51 years old, and I've spent 26 of those years crawling through the concrete arteries of dams from Oregon down to the Central Valley. I know the sound a healthy dam makes. It hums, it breathes, it groans when the reservoir behind it leans on the wall. What I was hearing that night was wrong. The hum was there, but underneath it was a knocking. Slow, deliberate, metal on metal, coming from the intake tower 200 feet away through solid rock and water. And the intercom, the one I'd used to check in with the control room every 20 minutes for the last 6 hours, had just given me static. Then a single word I couldn't make out. Then nothing. I keyed it again. "Control, this is Vance in the gallery. Say again your last. Over." The gauge in front of me ticked up another notch, and somewhere in that dark, the knocking stopped. I want to take 1 second here, before this goes where it goes, to say thank you to everyone who keeps coming back to sit with these stories. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you found us. If this kind of grounded survival story is your thing, stay with the channel and leave a comment when something gets under your skin, because it genuinely helps more people find these. Now, let me get back to that night, because right after the knocking stopped, the emergency lights came on. Not the work lights, the emergency lights. That deep amber color that means the main bus has dropped and the dam is running on batteries. I stood there with my heart going hard in my chest and did the math I'd done 100 times in drills, but never once for real. Battery backup at Kettleridge held the essential systems for roughly 4 hours. After that, the spillway gates would sit wherever they were, the pumps would stop, and the sensors that told anyone anything about what the reservoir was doing would go dark. The amber glow made everything look drowned. I'd been down there since a little after 6 in the evening, brought in on an emergency contract because Kettleridge had been flagged for seepage along the left abutment after the atmospheric river parked itself over the northern Sierra foothills and refused to move. 3 days of rain that fell like the sky had a grudge. The reservoir had come up 11 feet in 72 hours. That's not a slow creep. That's a wall of water testing every crack in a structure that had been built in 1961 and patched more times than anyone wanted to admit. I'd come down alone to inspect the seepage weirs, which are just precise little channels that measure how much water is finding its way down through the concrete. A dam is supposed to leak a little. That's normal. What you watch for is a change. That morning, the reading had been 40 gallons a minute. When I'd checked it 2 hours before the lights dropped, it was pushing 90. That's the kind of number that ends careers if you ignore it, and ends towns if you're wrong about it. Let me tell you about Kettleridge, so you understand what kind of place I was standing inside. It's an earth and concrete structure, what we call a composite dam, 412 feet from the stream bed to the crest. Behind it sat about 190,000 acre-feet of water, which is a number that means nothing until you translate it. Enough water to bury a small city under 60 feet if it all came at once. Downstream, 22 miles down a narrow canyon, sat the town of Halvorsen. Population 4,000 and change. A high school, a diner I liked, a stretch of 2-lane road that was the only way in or out. Between that water and that town stood the dam, and inside the dam that night stood 5 people. There was me, the outside contractor, There was Dale Okafor, the dam superintendent, a heavy-set man of about 60, who'd run Kettleridge for 19 years and knew its moods better than his own wife's, or so he liked to say. There was a younger operator named Rowena Fisk, maybe 30, sharp, quiet, the kind of person who reads the manual and remembers it. There was a maintenance tech named Kurt Brennan, 40s, ex-Navy, all forearms and opinions. And there was a hydrologist the state had sent up with me, a man named Petrakis, thin, nervous, always cleaning his glasses on his shirt. 5 people, 1 dam, and a reservoir that wouldn't stop rising. I started up the gallery toward the vertical shaft that would take me back to the control level. My boots rang on the steel grating. The seepage water on the gallery floor had gotten deeper since I'd come down, up over the soles of my boots now, cold enough to bite through the leather. That wasn't right either. The sump pumps should have been keeping the gallery dry. If the gallery was flooding, either the pumps had failed or the water coming in had finally outrun them. I got to the shaft and looked up. The service elevator was a steel cage that ran up through the body of the dam. Its call button glowed a dead red. No power to the car. That left the emergency stairs, a spiral of steel that wound up 90 feet in the dark. I clipped my flashlight to my chest harness and started climbing. Halfway up, I heard voices. Real ones, human, coming from above, distorted by the concrete. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the shape of them. And the shape was argument. 2 men, one of them Okafor by the low rumble of it, the other higher, faster. Brennan. They were shouting about something, and the acoustics turned it into noise. I came up out of the shaft onto the control level and pushed through the fire door into the operations room. And I stopped in the doorway because the room was wrong in a way that took me a second to name. The big windows that looked out over the downstream face of the dam, the ones that normally showed you the canyon and the road, and the amber safety lights strung along the crest, showed nothing, just black. The exterior lights were out. Beyond the glass, there was only the rain, coming down in sheets you could see when the lightning caught it. Inside, the control room ran on the amber emergency glow. The main SCADA screens, the computers that showed every gate position and pressure reading and water level in the whole dam, were dark. All of them. Someone had brought up a single laptop, and it sat on the console throwing a pale rectangle of light onto Rowena Fisk's face. She was hunched over it, typing hard. Okafor stood in the middle of the room with his hands spread like he was trying to hold the walls apart. Brennan was 3 feet from his face, red, jabbing a finger. Telling you the road washed out at the second switchback. I saw it on the camera before the camera died, Brennan was saying. So we're not driving anywhere. We are in a concrete box in the dark with the water coming up. You want to keep pretending this is a drill? Nobody said drill, Okafor said. His voice was tired in a way I hadn't heard from him before. I said we follow procedure. Procedure keeps people alive. Procedure assumes the phone works, Brennan shot back. That's when they noticed me. Vance, Okafor said, and the relief in it was real. Thank God. What's the gallery look like? I told them. The seepage weir at 90 and climbing. The gallery flooding past my boot soles. The sump pumps not keeping up. The knocking sound from the direction of the intake tower. And the intercom cutting out with one word I couldn't catch. The room got quiet. Even Brennan. Rowena spoke without looking up from the laptop. That tracks. I've got the gallery sump on my last good reading before the network dropped. Was already losing ground. The pump can move 800 gallons a minute. Something's putting more than that into the gallery. She turned the laptop so I could see a graph. a line climbing at an angle that made my stomach drop. That's the piezometer in the left abutment, the pressure inside the earthfill. It's supposed to sit flat. It's been going up for 6 hours. I knew what that meant. Every damn person knows what that means and spends a career praying they never see it. Water was getting into the body of the dam itself, into the packed earth of the abutment. And it was building pressure in there. If that pressure kept climbing, it would start moving soil. And once an earth-filled dam starts moving soil internally, you have a process called piping, where a little channel of moving water becomes a bigger channel, becomes a tunnel, becomes a failure. It can take days. It can take hours. Once it's visible from the outside, it's usually minutes. "How long since you had contact with anyone outside?" I asked. Okafor and Rowena exchanged a look. "The landline died 2 hours ago," Rowena said. "Cell's been dead all day. No towers up here. We had the microwave data linked to the State Ops Center in Sacramento. That's how they see our readings. But that dropped when the main power went. The satellite phone." She stopped. "The satellite phone what?" I said. Nobody answered right away. "The satellite phone is the emergency notification device," I said, slower now, because a cold feeling was starting up the back of my neck. "That's the thing that tells Halvorsen to evacuate. That's the thing that calls the county. Where is it?" "It's supposed to be in the emergency cabinet," Okafor said. "In the ready room, along with the go bags and the flares." He was already moving, and I followed. And Brennan followed. And Rowena stayed with her graph because somebody had to watch the number. The ready room was down a short hall, a windowless closet of a space with a steel cabinet bolted to the wall. Okafor spun the combination with fingers that fumbled twice. He hauled the door open. The satellite phone was gone. Not the whole cabinet. The flares were there. 2 of the 3 go bags were there. The first aid kit was there. But the molded foam cutout where the sat phone should have sat was empty. And so was the slot beside it, where the spare battery lived. Okafor stared at it. "That's not... It was here. I checked it Monday. I sign the log every Monday." "Where's Petrakis?" I said. Because in a room of 5 people, 4 of us were standing right there. And the one who wasn't was the state hydrologist, the outsider like me, the nervous man who cleaned his glasses, the man nobody had seen in the last half hour. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that he'd fallen. Maybe that he was hurt somewhere in the dark. What I did not let myself think, standing there looking at that empty foam cutout, was the simplest thing. That a frightened man who understood exactly how bad the numbers were had decided that the one working link to the outside world was worth more in his hands than in ours. We found the door first, the one that mattered. Kettleridge had 2 ways out. There was the main gallery portal at the base, which led to the access tunnel and the parking area. And there was the crest exit at the top, which came out onto the dam's roadway, the one that connected to the canyon road Brennan swore had washed out. The base portal was the one we'd all come in through. It was the way out that made sense, the way that didn't require crossing an exposed Dam Crest in a lightning storm. Okafor led us back through the control room and down the interior stairs toward the base level. And the water on the floor got deeper as we descended. And by the time we reached the portal corridor, it was at our shins, cold and moving. And the sound of it was everywhere. The portal door was a heavy steel security door, the kind with a bar handle and a deadbolt worked by a key. It stood at the end of the corridor, and even from 30 feet away in the flashlight beam, I could see that it was closed, which was fine. It was supposed to be closed. What wasn't fine was the padlock. There was a hasp on the inside of that door, added years ago so the crew could secure the portal from within during high water events, to keep the door from being blown open by pressure differentials. It took a padlock, and the padlock was on it, closed, locked, and the key that lived on a hook beside the door was not on the hook. Brennan reached it first and hauled on the door. It didn't move. He grabbed the padlock and yanked it, and it held, solid, and he turned to us with his face gone strange. "Where's the key?" he said. The hook was empty. A little brass hook screwed into the concrete, and hanging from it, nothing. Okafor patted his pockets like a man who's lost his wallet. Rowena had come down behind us, and she stood at the edge of the water with the laptop still glowing in her hands, and she said very quietly, "Petrakis was down here 20 minutes before the power dropped. I saw him come this way. He said he wanted to look at the base gauges." The base gauges were nowhere near the portal door. Nobody said the word. Nobody had to. The satellite phone was gone. The portal key was gone. And the one person unaccounted for was the man who'd walked toward both. I've replayed that moment more times than I can count. And what I remember most is not anger. Anger came later. What I remember is the specific physical drop in my gut when I understood that our safest exit, the base portal, the sensible way out, was now a locked steel door, and the man who'd locked it had the only key and the only phone, and he was somewhere in the dark of a dam that was quietly trying to kill us all. If you've ever been in a situation where you suddenly realize the plan you were counting on doesn't exist anymore, tell me where you were when it hit you, because I want to know I'm not the only one who's felt that specific floor drop out. Okafor found his voice first. "There's the Crest exit, top of the dam. We go up and out onto the roadway." "The roadway that washed out," Brennan said. "You don't know it washed out," Rowena said. "You saw the second switchback. That's a quarter-mile past the Crest. If we can get onto the Crest Road, we're at least outside. We're on the vehicles, and the county maintenance yard is at the vehicles are in the base lot," Brennan said. "Down here, behind that door." That landed on the four of us like a weight. Our trucks, my truck, everything with wheels, sat in a lot on the downstream side of the base, reachable only through the portal that was now locked. Getting out the Crest exit would put us on top of a 400-foot dam in a lightning storm, on foot, on a road that might or might not exist past the first bend, 22 miles from the nearest town, with no phone and no way to call anyone. "Then we find Petrakis," I said. "He has the key and the phone. That's not a maybe. That's the whole problem in one man. We find him, we get both back, and we make a real decision." "And if he doesn't want to give them back?" Brennan said. I didn't have an answer for that. Not one I liked. Rowena did something useful instead of standing there. She crouched, set the laptop on a dry electrical box, and pulled up the camera archive. The last frames each interior camera had saved before the network died. Most were black. But one, the camera in the mechanical gallery on the intermediate level, the level between us and the control room, had caught something. A figure, thin, moving fast down the gallery away from the camera toward the intake tower side of the dam. Timestamp 40 minutes ago. "He went into the mechanical gallery," she said, "toward the intake works." She looked up at me. "That's a dead end, Elliot. There's no exit that way. It just goes to the intake tower controls and the shaft down to the low-level outlet." "Then he's still in there," I said. Or he was. The knocking. I thought about the knocking I'd heard from the direction of the intake tower. The slow, deliberate metal on metal. and I felt the hairs go up on my arms. I hadn't been able to place it before. Now I could imagine a shape for it. A frightened man in a dark gallery doing something to the machinery. But what and why, I couldn't guess. We went up. Water sloshing, 4 flashlights, 4 people breathing too fast, back up the interior stairs to the intermediate level where the mechanical gallery ran the width of the dam. Okafor moved slower than the rest of us, and I hung back with him because I didn't like the color of his face. A gray sheen under the amber light. And because a superintendent who collapses is a superintendent who can't tell you which of the 40 valves in this place does what. "You okay?" I asked him low. "I'm 60 years old, and I've been awake for 30 hours, he said. "Ask me again when we're outside." He put a hand on the rail and pulled himself up a step. "Vance, that number Rowena's watching. The piezometer. You saw the slope on it." I saw it. "You know what I'm asking." I did. He was asking me, the outside expert, the man with no stake in Kettleridge's reputation, to tell him the truth he already knew. "If that pressure keeps climbing at that rate," I said, "and if the seepage keeps up, you've got internal erosion in the left abutment. Piping. I can't tell you the timeline without more instruments, and the instruments are dead. Could be a day. Could be a lot less if it accelerates. But I'll tell you what, I'd tell the county if I could reach them. I'd tell them to move Halvorsen tonight. Right now. Every soul in that canyon." He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed a diagnosis on a person he loved. "And we can't reach them?" "No. Because a scared man took the phone." "Yeah." He stopped on the stairs and looked at me, and for a second the tiredness burned off. And I saw the man who'd run this dam for 19 years. "Then finding him isn't about the key, Elliot. The trucks don't matter. If that abutment goes, no truck is outrunning it in that canyon. Finding him is about the phone. That phone is the only thing standing between 4,000 people and a wall of water." I hadn't put it in those words in my own head yet. And hearing him say it changed the shape of the whole night. This had stopped being about our 5 lives. Our 5 lives were suddenly the smallest part of it. We came up into the mechanical gallery, and the flashlights showed us a long tunnel lined with pipe. Big pipe, 3 and 4 feet across, the veins of the dam, painted institutional green and beaded now with condensation. Valves the size of car engines. Gauge panels dead and dark. The gallery ran level and straight toward the intake tower end, and the air in it was colder, and the knocking sound was back. There, real, ahead of us in the dark, metal on metal, slow. We moved toward it. Rowena had her flashlight in one hand, and a 2-foot pipe wrench she'd picked up somewhere in the other. And I noticed that and filed it away. That the quiet operator had thought to arm herself. Brennan had his fists. Okafor had his knowledge. I had a flashlight and a growing dread. The gallery opened out at the far end, into the intake tower control chamber. A round room at the base of the vertical tower that reached up through the reservoir. And there, in our flashlight beams, was Petrakis. He was on his knees at the base of the intake gate mechanism, and he had a wrench, and he was hitting the manual override linkage with it, over and over, and he was crying, and he did not stop when the light hit him. The satellite phone was on the floor beside him. I saw it, and my whole body leaned toward it before my brain caught up. But something was wrong with the way Petrakis was hunched, something wrong with the frantic, pointless rhythm of the hammering. And I said his name. Sai, stop. Look at me." He looked at me. His glasses were gone. His eyes were huge and wet, and I have never before or since seen that particular look on a human face. The look of a man who has done something he can't undo and knows it. I had to, he said. You don't understand what the numbers mean. You don't. The abutment, the pressure, it's going to go, and when it goes, the low-level outlet is the only thing that can pull the reservoir down fast enough to save the structure. And the outlet gate was seized. It wouldn't respond. So I came down to free it manually. I've been trying to free it. Sigh, I said. Where's the portal key? His face crumpled. I locked the door. Why did you lock the door? Because Brennan wanted to run. The words came out of him in a rush, high and shaking. He was going to take a truck and drive down the canyon, and I heard him. I heard him say it. And if the abutment goes with people on that road, they die. The wave comes down that canyon at 40 miles an hour. You can't outdrive it. I locked the door so nobody would do something stupid, so nobody would go out onto that road. I was trying to keep everyone here. Here is the only safe place. The dam is the only high ground. And here is the thing about Petrakis that I have never been able to hate him cleanly for. In the middle of his panic, buried under the theft and the locked door and the phone he'd taken, there was a thread of something true. If the abutment failed, the canyon road was the worst place on earth to be. He wasn't entirely wrong. He was just wrong about the way he'd decided to be right, wrong to take the choice from all of us, wrong to hoard the phone that could have saved the people in the canyon he claimed he was trying to protect. The phone, I said. You had the sat phone for 2 hours. Did you call anyone? He looked at it on the floor. He looked at me. And he said the thing that made the room go cold. It won't get a fix. The tower's blocking the sky. I've been down here trying to free the gate, and every time I take the phone up the gallery to try for signal, the gate seizes again, and I have to come back, and... He was babbling now. I couldn't do both. I couldn't hold the reservoir and call out at the same time. There's only one of me. I had to choose. I kept choosing the gate because the gate saves the dam, and the dam saves everyone. Rowena crossed the room, picked up the phone, and looked at the screen. Her jaw tightened. He's telling the truth about one thing, she said. It's got no fix, 0 bars. We're at the base of the tower. We're inside a concrete tube inside a dam. Of course it doesn't. She held it up. But it's got 12% battery. He said the spare battery. Sigh, where's the spare battery? Petrakis went very still. I used it, he whispered. The phone was dead when I took it. The main battery was dead. I put the spare in. This is the spare. There's no more. 12%. 1 battery. 1 satellite phone that needed open sky to reach anyone in a dam that had no open sky except one place. The crest. 400 feet up, out on the roadway, exposed to the storm. I did the math a 3rd time that night, and it came out worse than before. Rowena said it out loud, so we'd all carry the same weight. To call the county and tell them to evacuate Halvorsen. Someone has to take this phone up to the crest, get out onto the roadway, get a clear line to the sky, and hold a call long enough to give the warning. In this storm, on 12%. And we don't know how long the abutment holds. And the only fast way up, the elevator, is dead. It's the stairs. 12 stories of stairs. In the dark. Brennan laughed, an ugly short sound. So his big plan to save everybody was to lock us in a box and pray. Great. Real hero. He took a step toward Petrakis, and I put my arm out. Not now, I said. We do that later. Right now, that man is the only one who knows the state of that outlet gate, and we might need the outlet gate. Sigh. Is it free? Did you free it? Petrakis shook his head miserably. Half. It'll move maybe half open. I couldn't get it all the way. My hands... He held them up. They were bleeding. I made myself think. Cold and clear, the way you have to when there's no room left for feelings. We had a dam with water getting into its left abutment and pressure climbing. We had a low-level outlet gate that could, half open, start pulling the reservoir down and buy the structure time, if we could get it running now that Petrakis had freed it part way. And we had one phone with one dying battery that could warn 4,000 people, but only from the crest. 2 jobs, 2 locations, the base, to work the outlet and drop the reservoir, and the crest 400 feet up to make the call. 5 people, one of them barely standing, one of them with ruined hands, and a clock we couldn't see the face of. Before I tell you how we split up, and I want you to really sit with this, because the way we split up is the whole rest of the story. If you'd been standing in that room, 400 feet of concrete over your head, one dying phone, a locked door behind you, and a rising reservoir above you, who would you have sent up those stairs? And who would you have kept below? Hold on to your answer. See if it survives what happened next. We didn't have the luxury of a long argument. Okafor took charge, and I was glad of it, because in that moment, the crew needed their own man's voice, not the outsiders. Rowena, you know the SCADA, and you know the outlet controls better than any of us, he said. You stay at the base with me. We get the low-level outlet moving, half open, whatever we can get, and we start pulling this reservoir down. Brennan, you're the strongest, and you know the stair route. You take the phone to the crest. Vance. He looked at me. You go with Brennan. 2 of you on those stairs. If one goes down, the other carries the phone. What about him? Brennan said, meaning Petrakis. He stays with us, Okafor said. He freed that gate halfway once. He can help us finish the job. And I'm not sending a man who locked a door up to a place with an open drop and no witnesses. He didn't look at Brennan when he said it, but he didn't have to. He was keeping the 2 of them apart. 19 years of managing men in a metal box had taught him something. So it was set. Brennan and I would take the phone up. Rowena, Okafor, and Petrakis would work the outlet at the base. We synchronized watches, the old habit, and Okafor gave us the number to call, the county emergency line and the state dam safety hotline, both memorized. Because in a place like this, you memorize the numbers that matter. One more thing, Rowena said, and she pressed something into my hand. A small waterproof radio, one of the short-range handhelds the crew used inside the dam. These work through about 6 floors of concrete, no more. You'll lose us above the intermediate level. But until then, we talk. I want to know the second you're clear of the crest exit, and I want to know the second that call connects. And Elliot. She held my eyes. The phone battery, 12%. Don't waste it looking for signal in the wrong spot. The clearest sky is at the downstream parapet, the west end of the crest road, away from the tower. Stand there. Face west. That's where you'll get your fix. I have thought many times since about how much that one instruction mattered, and about how she was the one who thought to give it, and about what it says that the youngest person in that room was the one keeping the clearest head. Brennan and I started up. The stairs at Kettleridge are not built for speed. They're built for a maintenance crew moving tools, a switchback of steel treads bolted to the interior wall of an access shaft that runs from the base to the crest. 12 landings, somewhere over 400 vertical feet. In full power, the shaft is lit every 10 feet. That night, it had the amber emergency lamps at the landings only. So we climbed from island of light to island of light through stretches of full dark. And the sound of our boots on the steel came back at us from above and below until it felt like there were more than 2 of us on those stairs. Brennan set a hard pace, and I matched it as long as I could. But I'm 51, and he was 10 years younger and built like a fire hydrant. And by the 4th landing, My legs were burning, and my lungs had turned to gravel. He didn't slow. He had the phone zipped into the chest pocket of his jacket, and he climbed like a man being chased. "Brennan," I called up. "Pace. If you blow out your legs on 8, you don't make 12. I'm fine." But he slowed a little. At the 5th landing, he stopped, hands on knees, and I caught up, and we stood there under the amber lamp breathing at each other. "You believe him?" Brennan said. "Petrakis? That he was trying to save the dam?" I thought about it. I believe he believes it. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Brennan straightened. Under the lamp, his face was slick with sweat and rain that had gotten in somewhere. "I want to tell you something because we're up here alone, and I might not get another clean minute. When the power dropped, my first thought wasn't the dam. It wasn't the town. It was my kid. I've got a daughter in Halvorsen, 12 years old. She's at my ex's place on Cedar Street, which is low, which is right on the river." His voice didn't shake, but something behind it did. "So when you all were standing around that locked door talking about procedure, and I was talking about taking a truck, that's why. I wasn't running. I was trying to get to my kid before the water did." And there it was. The reason the strongest man on the crew had wanted to leave. Not cowardice. A father. And Petrakis, in his panic, had locked that man in a box and taken away the one thing, the phone, that could have warned his daughter's street to run. "Then let's make this call," I said. "The call warns Cedar Street too. The call is how you save her. Not a truck. The call. Climb." We climbed. At the 7th landing, the radio crackled, and Rowena's voice came through, thin and broken by the concrete. "Elliot, you copy? Outlets. We got it to a quarter open, gates fighting us. But the sump..." Static ate the rest. "Say again, the sump," I keyed back. Gallery sump reading dropped. "Little. Reservoirs coming down slow, real slow. Keep climbing." Then, fainter, almost lost. "The piezometer's still going up, though. Pressure's still building. Elliot, whatever you do up there, do it fast." That was the last I heard from the base for a long time. By the 8th landing, the radio gave us nothing but hiss. 6 floors of concrete, Rowena had said. We'd passed the limit. From here up, Brennan and I were on our own, cut off from the 3 below as completely as if they were on the moon. I want to describe what the 9th landing was like because it's where the dam reminded us what it was. The access shaft ran up the inside of the dam near the left abutment. The left abutment was the one with the pressure problem, the one where the water was getting into the earth fill. And on the 9th landing, I heard the dam working. It wasn't the hum. It was a deep, wet, grinding groan that came through the concrete wall beside the stairs, low enough that I felt it in my teeth before I heard it. It rose and fell. And under it, faint, a hiss, like sand pouring. I put my bare hand flat against the concrete, and it was vibrating. A fine buzzing tremor that had no business being in a structure that size. "What is that?" Brennan said. He'd stopped 2 treads up. I kept my hand on the wall a moment longer, then took it away. "That's water moving through soil, where soil isn't supposed to move," I said. "That's the abutment eroding. We're standing next to it." I didn't say the rest. I didn't say that the sound of piping, once you can hear it through 4 feet of concrete, means the process has scaled up, means the little channel of moving water has become a big one, means the clock we couldn't see had just shown us a hand. I didn't say it because Brennan had a 12-year-old on Cedar Street, and I needed his legs, not his fear. "Climb," I said again. It had become the only word that helped. Somewhere around the 10th landing, my body started to quit on me, and I made a deal with it the way you do. One landing at a time, just this one, just the next lamp. And I thought about Halvorsen, the diner, the kids at the high school. 4,000 people asleep or awake and utterly unaware that their lives hung on two exhausted men climbing a staircase in the dark with a phone at 12%. At the 11th landing, Brennan went down. His right leg cramped, the whole muscle seizing, and he dropped to the steel with a sound of pure animal pain and grabbed at his thigh. I got to him and pressed my thumbs into the knot and worked it while he swore through his teeth. "Give me the phone," I said. "I'll take it up. You follow when the leg lets you." He looked at me. For 1 second, I saw the whole calculation go across his face. The father who didn't want to hand off the thing that could save his daughter. The fear of trusting someone else with it. Then he unzipped the pocket and put the phone in my hand. "West parapet," he said. "Face west." She said west. I heard her. "I've got it. I'll hold the call. Get up here when you can." I left him on the 11th landing, needing his leg. And I climbed the last flight alone. And I came to the crest exit, a steel door with a push bar. And I hit the bar and shoved, and the storm came in. I have been outside in bad weather my whole working life, and I have never felt anything like the top of that dam at that hour. The wind came up the canyon and over the crest and hit the door like a body. Rain went sideways. The crest roadway stretched away in front of me, a ribbon of wet concrete 400 feet above the stream bed, with a parapet wall on each side that came up to my waist, and beyond the parapet, nothing but black air and the sound of the reservoir on one side and the drop on the other. Lightning walked along the ridgeline, and in its light, I saw the whole thing for half a second. The reservoir, a heaving black plain nearly at the crest, the downstream face falling away into the canyon. And far below, 22 miles down, too far to see, the town that didn't know. The west parapet was 200 feet away along the exposed crest. I put my shoulder into the wind and went. Walking that crest in that storm is the closest I have come to feeling like the world simply did not care whether I lived. The wind tried to put me over the parapet twice. The rain was so hard I climbed with my eyes half shut. And under my boots, through the concrete of the crest, I could feel it. That same fine tremor from the 9th landing, but bigger now. A shudder that came up through my soles every few seconds like the dam had a slow heartbeat and the heart was in trouble. I reached the west parapet. I got down behind it, out of the worst of the wind, and I pulled the phone out, and it was slick with rain, and my hands were shaking with cold and exhaustion, and I nearly dropped it into the dark. And I remember thinking with a strange flat clarity that if I dropped it, 4,000 people would find out at the same moment the water did. I gripped it in both hands. I turned it on. 12%. The screen searched for a signal, that little spinning icon, searching, searching. And I faced west the way Rowena had told me and held it up to the open black sky over the downstream canyon. And the wind screamed, and I waited. 1 bar. I dialed the county emergency line. It rang. Rain ran into my collar. It rang again, and a voice, a human voice, tired, ordinary, said, "County dispatch, what's your emergency?" I will never forget how normal she sounded. "This is Elliot Vance. I'm a contractor at Kettleridge Dam," I said, fast and clear, because I did not know how many seconds the battery or the signal would give me. "Listen to me carefully, and don't interrupt. Kettleridge Dam is experiencing internal erosion in the left abutment. We have confirmed piping. The structure is at risk of failure. I need you to initiate the emergency action plan and evacuate the town of Halvorsen and the entire canyon downstream immediately. This is not a drill. Do you copy? A pause. Sir, can you confirm your... There's no time to confirm. I'm standing on the crest. I can hear the abutment eroding through 4 feet of concrete. The piezometers were climbing when our instruments died. Evacuate the canyon. Start with the low ground, Cedar Street and the River Road. Tell them to go up, not down the canyon, up the ridge roads. The wave will come down the canyon. Do you copy? I copy, she said, and her voice had changed, all the ordinary gone out of it. Evacuate Halvorsen and the canyon. Move to high ground. Kettleridge at risk of failure. I'm relaying to the sheriff and the state now. Sir, how long do we have? And that was the question I couldn't answer and hated that I couldn't. I don't know, I said. Hours if you're lucky, maybe less. Move now. Every minute is people. Copy. Stay on the... The phone died. Not the call. The phone. The screen went black in my hands. 12% gone to 0 in the cold. The way lithium does when it's freezing and working hard. And the wind took the last of the light off the dead glass. And I crouched there behind the west parapet with a dead phone and no way to know if the last thing she'd said was stay on the line or help is coming or anything at all. But she'd copied. Before it died, she'd copied. Evacuate the canyon. She'd said it back to me. The warning was out. I want to stop here for one breath. Because if you've stayed with me this far, through the cold and the stairs and that call, I'm grateful. And I hope you're the kind of person who'd have made that climb too. If you are, you know where to be for stories like this. Now let me tell you what was waiting for me when I turned around, because the night was only half over. I got the dead phone back into my pocket and I turned to go back across the crest to the door. And that's when the dam moved. Not the tremor, a movement. The whole crest under me shifted, a lurch of maybe an inch, there and gone, and from the left abutment end of the dam came a sound I had never heard and hoped to never hear again. A deep, tearing crack. The sound of a very large structure discovering a new shape. The parapet wall 30 feet to my left, near the abutment, tilted. Just tilted, leaned outward toward the drop, and a section of it the length of a car detached and went silently over the downstream face into the black. The abutment was going. Not failed, going. There's a difference, and the difference is the only reason I'm alive. A dam like Kettleridge doesn't vanish in a heartbeat. It fails in stages, and the first stage is the settling and cracking I was feeling. And I had some amount of time, minutes maybe, before the stages ran out. And Brennan was on the 11th landing, inside, on the abutment side. I keyed the radio, forgetting for a second that concrete would eat it, and got nothing, and I ran. Back along the crest, with the wind trying to finish what the abutment had started, back to the steel door. And I hauled it open and plunged into the shaft and screamed his name down the stairwell. Brennan, move, now, it's going. The abutment's going. Get up here. His voice came back up, closer than I feared. I'm coming, Legs. I'm on 12. And then he came around the last switchback, limping hard, hauling himself up by the rail. And the whole shaft groaned around us, that grinding wet sound now loud enough to hurt. Dust sifting down from somewhere above, and I got a hand under his arm and dragged him up the last treads and out through the crest door into the storm. Did it connect? He gasped. The call. Did it connect? It connected. They copied. The canyon's being evacuated. I said it right into his ear over the wind. Cedar Street's on the list. First on the list. I said it twice. Something went out of him, some rigid thing. And for a second, he just stood there in the rain with his eyes closed. Then the crest lurched again, and we both grabbed the parapet, and the moment was over. Because now we had our own problem. We were on top of a failing dam, in a storm, 400 feet up, with a dead phone and a leg that barely worked between us. The base portal was locked. The base itself had Rowena, Okafor, and Petrakis in it, at the bottom, at the abutment end, working an outlet gate in a structure that was coming apart above them. The others, Brennan said. And the same thought had already put ice in me. They're at the base. If the abutment... The outlet, I said. If they got the outlet open, the reservoir's dropping. Every foot it drops is less pressure on the abutment. That's the only thing slowing this down. They're the reason we're still standing here. And it was true. And it was also the cruelest part, that the three people in the most danger were the ones buying the rest of us time. The radio in my hand crackled. We'd come off the stairs, we were up top. We should have had nothing. But the crest exit put us near a cable run that must have carried the signal, because for one moment, Rowena's voice came through. Torn to pieces, but real. Elliot, copy. The outlets. We got it to half. Reservoirs dropping a foot every. Static. Okafor's down. He collapsed. I've got him, but I can't. Petrakis is... Static swallowed her whole. Rowena, I keyed. Rowena, get out. The abutment's failing at the crest. Get to the base portal. Get out. Do you copy? Get out. Nothing. The window had closed. 6 floors of concrete, and now the concrete was cracking, which probably meant the cable run was failing too, and I was shouting into a dead handset in a storm. Brennan grabbed my arm. The portal's locked. They can't get out the portal. Petrakis has the key. They're locked in. And the whole horror of what Petrakis had done came back around and closed like a trap. He'd locked the base portal to keep everyone from running out onto the canyon road. And now the 3 of them were at the base of a failing dam. And the door to safety was padlocked. And the man with the key was down there with them. And if he was hurt, or panicking, or worse, that key might as well have been at the bottom of the reservoir. Is there another way into them? Brennan said. From up here. Any way down that isn't that shaft. I ran the dam's anatomy through my head, every drawing I'd studied before this contract. The service elevator, dead. The stairs we'd just come up, which ran through the failing abutment side, and which I would not send a healthy man down now, let alone a limping one, into a shaft that was cracking. And the intake tower, I said. There's a shaft in the intake tower that goes down to the intake controls, right next to the outlet works, right where they are. The tower's on the right abutment side, the side that isn't failing. If we can get into the tower from the crest, there's a service ladder that drops down inside it to the base. You said the tower blocks the sky. That's why the phone wouldn't... I don't need the sky now. I need a way down that isn't in the collapsing side. The tower's the far side of the crest. It's the sound side. I was already moving, and Brennan was limping after me, and the crest under us was shuddering now on a slow rhythm. Settle and crack, settle and crack. The intake tower rose out of the reservoir at the far end of the crest, connected to the dam by a short access bridge, a catwalk with rails that ran out over the black water to a round concrete tower with a door in it. In the lightning, it looked like a lighthouse that had forgotten the ocean. We crossed the catwalk with the wind trying to peel us off it, the reservoir slopping and heaving just below the grating. Close, so much closer to the crest than it should have been. And I understood looking at it that even with the outlet half open, the reservoir was still nearly at the top, still leaning its full, impossible weight on a dam that was tearing itself apart at the other end. The tower door was unlocked. Small mercy. We got it open and got inside, and the wind cut off. And the sudden quiet was its own kind of shock. Just the drum of rain on the concrete tower, and below us, down the black throat of the shaft, the sound of the dam. I found the service ladder with my flashlight. A steel ladder bolted to the inside of the tower, dropping straight down into the dark, down toward the intake controls at the base, toward where Rowena and Okafor and Petrakis were. "Your leg won't take that ladder," I said to Brennan. "Not going down, not in a hurry. If it cramps on the ladder, you fall." "I'm not staying up here." "You are, and here's why." I put it to him straight, because he was a straight man, and he'd earned it. "If I get down there and get that portal open, they need someone up top who can get to a vehicle and get to the county road and confirm the evacuation, in case the phone died before dispatch really moved on it. You've got a daughter on Cedar Street. You are exactly the man who will crawl on broken legs to make sure that evacuation is real. So you get across this catwalk, you get to the Crest maintenance shed. There's a utility truck that lives up here for Crest work. Keys in a lockbox. Code is the dam's ID number. 61 Kettleridge, Okafor told me during the walkthrough. You get that truck, and you get down the Crest Road as far as it goes, and you make the world believe us. That's your job. Mine's the ladder. He didn't want to. I saw him not want to. But he was a father, and I'd handed him the one thing that let him keep moving toward his kid. And after a second, he gripped my shoulder hard, once, and said, "Don't die down there, Vance," and turned and went back out into the storm toward the truck. I put the flashlight in my teeth and started down the ladder. Going down that shaft inside the intake tower was going down into the sound of the dam dying. The groaning got louder the lower I went. And now there was water in it. The roar of the low-level outlet running half-open somewhere below. The reservoir tearing itself out through the outlet works in a controlled scream. The ladder was slick. My arms had nothing left in them, and I made them work anyway. Rung by rung, down past the reservoir's midline, where the walls sweated. Down toward the amber glow that meant the base level and the people I'd left there. I came off the ladder into the intake control chamber, the same round room where we'd found Petrakis on his knees. And the water was at my thighs now, cold and fast and moving toward the outlet, with a pull I could feel against my legs. The outlet gate stood half open across the room, and through it the reservoir was pouring. A solid green-black slab of water folding into the dark of the outlet tunnel with a sound like the end of the world. And it was working. That was the reservoir dropping. That was the pressure coming off the abutment 1 foot at a time. And it was the most beautiful and most terrifying thing I have ever seen. Rowena was there. She was braced against the outlet control stand with one arm, and she had Okafor half out of the water, his head against her shoulder, his face gray, conscious but wrong, one side of it slack. A stroke or a heart, I couldn't tell, and it didn't matter. He needed a hospital, and there was no hospital. There was a locked door and a rising base. "Elliot." Her voice cracked with relief and fear together. "How did you—" "The tower ladder." "Of course. Elliot. He collapsed 20 minutes ago. I got the outlet to half before he went down. I've been holding him out of the water and holding the gate, and I can't do both anymore. The water's still coming up down here, even with the outlet running. The gallery's flooding faster than the outlet pulls it." "Where's Petrakis?" I said. Because again, in a room I could count. Rowena, Okafor. And not the third. She looked at me and her jaw worked and she said the thing. "He has the key, Elliot. The portal key. When Okafor went down, I told Petrakis to run for the portal and get it open so we could carry Dale out. He took the key off his belt, and he waded down the corridor to the door and... Her voice went flat. The flatness of someone holding something at arm's length so it doesn't destroy them. He opened it. I heard the padlock. I heard the door. And then I heard it close again. And the lock. He went out, Elliot. He opened the portal, he went out, and he locked it behind him. I stood in the rising water, and I understood. Petrakis had done it again. The same act, the same logic twisted into the same shape. He'd told himself a story where locking the door was protection, was keeping people safe, keeping them from running out onto a dangerous road. And maybe the first time, in the control room, he'd even half believed it. But this time, the water was at his chest, and the dam was cracking, and the story had worn down to its true center, which is the center it had always had, which is a frightened man deciding that his own life was the one that got to leave through the open door. He'd taken the key up top the first time to stop Brennan. This time, he'd used it to save exactly one person, himself. And he'd locked the door behind him so that opening it again would cost us the seconds we didn't have. Somewhere out there, on the downstream side, was our locked exit and our vehicles, and a man wading toward them alone. And in here was the water at my thighs, and climbing. A superintendent who couldn't walk. A young woman who'd held a dying man and a failing gate with her own 2 arms, while everyone else went looking for a phone. And me, with nothing left in my body, and a dam coming apart over our heads. I have asked myself 1,000 times since then what the right thing to do to a man like Petrakis would even be. He wasn't a monster in a story. He was a scared civilian who found the worst version of himself twice in one night and let it drive. The first time he took the phone and half froze 4,000 people's chances. The second time, he opened the only door and closed it on the 2 people who couldn't run. So, I'll put it to you the way I've never been able to answer it myself. If you had been standing in that flooding chamber, and you got out, and you found the man who'd locked that door on Rowena and Okafor waiting alive on the other side, what would you have done to him? Not what should happen in a courtroom. What would you have done right then, with the water still dripping off you? I want to hear it, because I have never trusted my own answer. But that's later. In the chamber, there was no time for what I'd do to Petrakis. There was only the door and the water and the 2 people who were going to drown if I stood there hating a man who'd already gone. The ladder, Rowena said, reading my face. We go back up the tower ladder. It's the only way out now. Okafor can't climb a ladder. Look at him. His right side wasn't working. A man can't go up 40 feet of vertical steel one-armed with the strength gone out of half his body. And the water's coming up under us. We climbed the tower. We're climbing back up into the failing dam. And the second the abutment lets go, the reservoir doesn't just leak out the outlet. It comes over and through, and that tower shakes like a rung bell. Then what? She said. Not panicked, demanding. The best kind of question. You're the expert, Elliot. You've got a superintendent who can't climb, a base that's flooding, an outlet that's not keeping up, a locked portal, and an abutment that's failing. Pick something. Pick it now. I looked at the outlet gate, half open, the reservoir screaming through it into the outlet tunnel, dropping the reservoir a foot at a time, the one thing slowing the failure. And a thought came to me that was either salvation or the last mistake of my life. The outlet tunnel. The low-level outlet is a tunnel that runs from that gate at the base of the dam through the body of the dam and out the downstream face into the canyon, well below the crest. Right now it was running half full, a torrent, no way through. But it connected the inside of the dam to the outside. It bypassed the locked portal entirely. If we could close the outlet gate, or close it most of the way, for even a few minutes, the tunnel behind it would drain, and it would be a way out. A concrete tube leading down and out to the canyon floor, below the dam, on the ground. But closing the outlet gate meant stopping the one thing dropping the reservoir. It meant putting the pressure back on the abutment. It meant trading the town's time for our lives, hour by hour. And I did not have the right to make that trade. And there was no one to make it but me. Rowena. I waded to her, and I said it fast, because saying it slow would have stopped me. The outlet tunnel is a way out. Below the crest, through the dam, to the canyon floor. But it's running. To use it, we close the gate, drain the tunnel, and go down it before the water backs up again. And closing that gate stops the reservoir dropping. It puts the load back on the abutment. It speeds up the failure. She got it instantly. I saw her get it. You're saying we buy our 3 lives with the town's minutes. I'm saying the town's been warned. The evacuation's moving. Every foot we've dropped the reservoir already bought them time, and that time is banked. They can't unwarn Halvorsen. And I'm saying, if we stay here, we drown at the base, or we die in the tower, when the abutment goes. And then there's no one left who saw this. No one to tell the county how bad it really is. No one to make sure they don't send people back too soon. Living is also a job, Rowena. Somebody has to carry what happened out of this dam. She looked at Okafor, gray against her shoulder, and at the outlet gate, and at me. And Okafor, who I'd thought was past speaking, moved his good hand and gripped her wrist and got one word out through the working side of his mouth. Go. That was the critical decision, and I made it. And I have carried it every day since. I closed the gate. I waded to the outlet control stand, and I put both hands on the manual wheel, the same linkage Petrakis had beaten half to death. And I turned it, and it fought me, and Rowena eased Okafor against the stand and put her hands beside mine, and we turned it together, the two of us. And the roar of the outlet dropped and dropped, and the great slab of water folding into the tunnel thinned and slowed and became a sheet, and then a curtain, and then a running film over concrete. And the tunnel mouth showed itself, a dark round throat leading down and out through the dam toward the canyon. And the instant the outlet closed, the dam knew. The groan from the abutment climbed into something with an edge on it. The water at the base, no longer pulled down by the outlet, began to rise faster around our legs. We had traded, and the bill was coming due, and it was coming due fast. We had one working body between 3, and 40 feet of ladder we couldn't use for Okafor, and a tunnel that would refill the moment the pressure won. Help me get him to the tunnel mouth, I said. Getting Dale Okafor across that chamber was the hardest physical thing I have ever done. He was a big man, dead weight down one side, and the water pulled and the floor was slick, and we half carried, half floated him to the outlet gate and through the gap where the water still sheeted over the sill, and into the tunnel mouth. And the tunnel sloped down and away from us. A smooth concrete tube maybe 6 feet across. Water running down the middle of it toward the far distant round of gray that had to be the downstream opening, the canyon, the outside. It's a long way, Rowena said, looking down it. How long is that tunnel? Through the base of the dam and out the toe. 600-700 feet. Downhill. We slide if we have to. I got Okafor's good arm over my shoulders. Rowena, when that gate lets go behind us, and it will, this tunnel fills. We do not stop. Whatever we hear behind us, we go down and we do not stop. Do you understand me? I understand. We went down into the tunnel. I will not pretend it was anything but a nightmare. The concrete was slick with 100 years of silt made of one storm's worth of runoff. And it sloped down at an angle that made every step a controlled fall. And the water ran with us, around our ankles. And the sound in that tube was the sound of the whole dam, magnified and thrown down the pipe at us. We moved Okafor between us, and where the slope led us, we sat him and slid him. And where it didn't, we hauled. And the round gray of the far end came closer with an agonizing slowness. Behind us, up the tunnel, the abutment failed. There is no sound in my life to compare it to. A concussion, a roar, a physical blow of air that came down the tunnel and shoved us forward. And behind it, immediately behind it, the sound of the reservoir finding its new way out. The gate we'd closed did not hold against the failing dam. Nothing was going to hold. And the tunnel behind us, which had been a way out, became what it was built to be, a channel for the reservoir. And I heard the water coming down it after us with a sound like a train in a tunnel, because that is exactly what it was. "Go!" I screamed. And we went. We abandoned any pretense of care. We hauled Okafor between us and half fell down the last of the slope toward the gray circle of the canyon. And the light in the tunnel changed, the storm lightning finding us from the outside, and the roar behind us swelled. And I felt the first push of the air the water drove ahead of itself. And the mouth of the tunnel was there, right there, a lip of concrete, and beyond it, the wet black rocks of the canyon floor. In the open storm, we came out of the tunnel, and the ground fell away downhill. And we let it take us, all three of us in a tangle, rolling and sliding down the wet rock apron below the dam's toe, away from the mouth, away. And behind us, the tunnel vomited the reservoir into the canyon. A column of water blasting out of the dam's toe under the whole weight of the lake, and it went where the canyon took it, downhill, downstream, roaring off into the dark toward the town, 22 miles away, that I could only pray had listened. We ended up in a heap of boulders on the canyon's north wall, above the stream bed, high enough, I hoped, high enough. And I got Okafor's face out of the mud, and Rowena crawled up beside us. And we lay there in the driving rain and watched the Kettleridge Dam come apart. It didn't go all at once, even then. The left abutment breached, and a section of the crest went with it. And through the breach came the reservoir in a way I will see for the rest of my life. A moving wall of water lit silver by the lightning, pouring down into the canyon. And the roar of it filled the whole world. And I thought about Brennan up top, and whether he'd gotten the truck and gotten off the crest before the crest was gone. And I had no way to know. And that not knowing sat in my chest like a stone. We stayed in the rocks until the worst of it passed, until the reservoir had emptied itself down the canyon, and the flow settled into a roaring but no longer world-ending river through the wreckage of the dam. Okafor was alive. Breathing, one side gone, but alive. And Rowena held his hand and talked to him low and steady the whole time. And I have never respected a person more than I respected her in those hours. When the gray of dawn came, it came slow. And it showed us the canyon. What was left of the dam was a broken jaw of concrete with the river running through the gap. The intake tower still stood, out on the right abutment side, the sound side, and I thought of the ladder I'd climbed down, and the tower Brennan and I had crossed to. And I understood that if we'd tried to escape up that tower, we'd have died in it. Rescue found us at mid-morning. A county search team came up the canyon on foot from below, from the town side. And the first thing I asked the deputy who reached us, before I asked about anything else, was Halvorsen. Did they get out? Did the canyon get the warning? He looked at me strange, this exhausted, filthy man clutching his sleeve. And he said the word that let me breathe for the first time in 12 hours. Evacuated, he said. Called it around midnight. Some contractor got through to dispatch, gave the warning. Dispatch moved the sheriff. Sheriff moved the town. Whole canyon was out on the ridge roads before the water came. Cedar Street got hit hardest. Water took the low houses. But the people were gone. Nobody in the water. Some contractors saved that whole town with one phone call from the top of the dam before it went. Some contractor. He didn't know it was me. I didn't tell him. I found I couldn't get the words out. Brennan had made it. He'd gotten the Crest truck and driven it down the Crest road as the Crest was failing behind him. Off the dam and onto the canyon road. And he'd stopped at every low house on Cedar Street and pounded on doors himself, his daughter's street, and gotten his girl and her mother out, and then kept going, door to door, until the sheriff's people took over. His leg was a mess. He didn't care. When I saw him at the county building 2 days later, he grabbed me, and neither of us could talk for a while. Okafor lived. The stroke took some of him, and he never ran a dam again. But he lived. And Rowena visited him every week. And so did I when I could. They never found Petrakis. They found the base portal, or what was left of it, blown out and twisted in the wreckage. So we know he got the door open before he locked it behind him. They found his glasses, later downstream, a mile below the toe, which tells you something about where the man himself probably ended up. He'd opened the door and gone out into the canyon on foot, alone, in the dark, on the downstream side of a dam that was 30 minutes from becoming a wall of water moving 40 miles an hour down a canyon with no high ground at the toe. He'd locked the door to save himself, and the door he'd chosen led into the exact path of the thing he was running from. If he'd stayed, if he'd waded back to the tunnel with us, he'd have come out where we came out, on the north wall above the water. His last decision to save himself is the one that killed him. I don't say that with satisfaction. I say it because it's the truest and saddest thing I know about that night. The man was so afraid of dying that he ran straight into the river. I've thought a lot about what he was, in the end. Not a villain twirling a mustache. A frightened person who kept telling himself a decent story to cover an indecent choice. Twice. And the second time the story ran out, and there was just the choice. Naked, a locked door, and 2 people on the wrong side of it. Fear made him do it. And I understand fear. I felt plenty of it on those stairs, and that crest, and in that flooding chamber. The difference, and I hold on to this difference because it's the only handhold I've found. The difference is what you do with the fear when there's someone else in the room. Petrakis let his fear decide for everyone. Rowena held a dying man and a failing gate and let her fear wait its turn. Brennan carried his fear up 12 stories and turned it into a phone call and 100-pounded doors. Same fear, different men. I still work dams. People ask me how I can after that, and the honest answer is that it's the opposite. Kettleridge taught me exactly how much these structures hold back, and exactly how the people inside them are the difference between a warning and a funeral. Every seepage weir I read now, every piezometer, every dead phone I test twice before I go down. I do it thinking about a town on the ridge roads at midnight, alive because a signal got out before the wall did. But there's a part of the night I've never resolved, and I don't think I ever will. And it's the part I keep bringing back to people like you who've sat with the whole thing now. When I came out of that tunnel and lay in the rocks and watched the dam break, part of me was still down in that flooding chamber, standing in the rising water, looking at the empty place where a man had been. The man who'd opened the only door and closed it on the people who couldn't run. And in that version, the version that lives in my head, he didn't die in the canyon. He's alive. He's waiting on the downstream side. And I've just come out of the tunnel, soaked, shaking, with everything I've got left, and there he is. So I'll ask you one more time, and I mean it. I really want to know, because I've never once been able to answer it cleanly for myself. Standing there, right then, with the water still running off you and the people he locked in behind you finally safe by everything except him. What would you have done to Petrakis? Tell me. And tell me where you're listening from. Because I've come to believe the answer depends a lot on whether you've ever been the one holding the only door.